Stop, you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. Subscribe now, we have new stories every day. Now, let's go. The alarm buzzed like it always did, kicking off the start of our day. Charlotte, my wife, and I reluctantly rolled out of bed. The early rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, and I groaned, feeling unusually worn out as I swung my legs over the side of the bed. "Why do you sound like you're getting old?" Charlotte teased, already making her way to the bathroom. "Things on the Zodiac Road. And you were right," she said. "You were indeed." She sang for a few more songs. "I think I am," I joked, still thinking about how wild the previous evening had been. Charlotte had a knack for keeping things interesting. Charlotte wasn't the only one. Today marked the beginning of her business trip, which meant I'd be on my own for the next week. I wasn't exactly looking forward to it. I heard the water running in the shower and considered joining her, but I needed a few more minutes to myself. Last night had taken a toll, and I wasn't in any rush. Charlotte came bouncing back into the bedroom, full of energy, which made me feel even slower in comparison. "Come on, get up, sleepyhead. We've got bills to pay," she said with a playful nudge. All right, I'm up," I replied, dragging myself to the bathroom to splash some water on my face. After freshening up, we had breakfast together before going our separate ways, Charlotte heading to the airport and me to my job. We both worked at a manufacturing company in Chicago. Charlotte was a corporate lawyer specializing in negotiations, and her current trip to Seattle was for talks with a tech firm about a new contract. She traveled a few times a year for work, usually gone for about a week each time. Charlotte, 34, had finished law school at Ohio State over a decade ago. She stood about 5'5", weighed around 130 pounds, and had a figure that always caught attention. From the very start, Charlotte had me wrapped around her finger. "My name is Mike Brooks, and I'm an engineer at the same company where Charlotte practices law. I'm 38 years old, 6'2", and I try to stay in shape by hitting the gym regularly. Charlotte and I are golf lovers, often playing with friends. Our relationship really began to take off during a company outing. For me, it was love at first sight, and we were married just 6 months later. Now, 7 years into marriage, we've just bought the house of our dreams, with plans to start a family soon. Charlotte was looking forward to becoming a stay-at-home mum once we had kids, a plan supported by both of our parents, who lived close by. In fact, she was planning to stop taking birth control after this trip. After breakfast, I helped Charlotte pack up her car for the trip. She kissed me goodbye, and I noticed her eyes misting up as she got behind the wheel. "I really hope we don't have to say goodbye like this much longer," I said, feeling hopeful about the future we were building together. "I can't wait until the trip ends," she said, clearly not enjoying these farewells any more than I did. "I hate saying goodbye as much as you do," I reassured her. "How about we order in on Friday night when you get back? Relax with some takeout?" "That sounds amazing. See you then," she said before pulling out of the driveway. I stood there, watching her car disappear down the road, then headed inside to get ready for my workday. At the office, after grabbing a coffee, I went straight to my desk. That's when my phone rang. I answered on the second ring, and it was my mother on the line. She was calm, but still very shaken. "Brooks here," I answered. "Hey Mike, can you swing by my office for a moment?" my boss, Mr. Patterson, asked. "Sure thing, I'm on my way," I said, taking my coffee along with me. When I got there, he motioned for me to sit down. "Mike, I've got an opportunity you might want to consider. Since Charlotte's away, it crossed my mind that our tech guy in California, Greg Andrews, is out sick, and there's a client in Los Angeles that needs some help. You're familiar with the equipment. Could you head out there to sort it out?" I paused for a moment, thinking. "Actually, I've got nothing pressing here, and with Charlotte gone, I'm free." "When do they need me?" "As soon as possible," he replied. "Mary will take care of your travel details. Make sure to contact the client and get the full picture of what's going on." "Got it. I'll head out this afternoon so I can be at the client's first thing tomorrow," I said, suddenly feeling excited about the impromptu trip. "Safe travels, Mike." Mr. Patterson said, wrapping up our conversation. I stopped by Mary's desk to give her a heads up about my travel arrangements and then called the client to get more information about their problem. With that done, I headed home to pack. Driving home, I couldn't help but grin as an idea popped into my head. If I wrapped things up early, I could surprise Charlotte in Seattle. The thought of showing up unannounced had me more excited about the trip. While waiting at the airport for my flight, I tried to call Charlotte, but she didn't pick up. I left a message saying I'd be at my parents' place for a few days and that she could reach me on my cell. Everything went smoothly, and by Tuesday afternoon I had the client's issue resolved and their equipment running smoothly. Wasting no time, I booked a flight to Seattle, aiming to arrive by 9 p.m. After checking out of my hotel, I headed to the San Francisco airport, grabbed dinner, and while eating, Charlotte called. We chatted briefly. She asked how things were going at my parents' place, and I kept up the act. Charlotte mentioned that negotiations were progressing, but that she was exhausted and planned to spend the evening resting in her hotel room. After exchanging a quick goodbye, we hung up. I boarded the plane, nerves tightening with each passing moment. By the time I reached Charlotte's high-end hotel, around 9:45 p.m., my stomach was already in knots. After a brief check with the front desk, they handed me a key card to her suite. The walk to the room felt longer than it should have, my mind racing with excitement and anticipation. I'd planned a surprise, to make her smile, to sweep her off her feet with an unexpected visit. But when I stepped quietly into the suite, something immediately felt off. The only light came from the lamp by her closed laptop on the desk. The room was eerily silent, and there was no sign of Charlotte. I set down my suitcase, a flicker of confusion growing. I looked around and saw the cradle was empty. I looked back towards Charlotte. Her face was flushed. She seemed to be listening. Where was he? I checked the bedroom, empty. The bathroom? Empty too. A strange unease began to settle in. Maybe she was still out, but it was almost 10 p.m. Shouldn't she be back by now? I was debating whether to wait or go look for her when I noticed the door to the adjoining suite was slightly ajar. My pulse quickened. I pushed it open, slipping silently inside, only to find the living room empty. I stepped into the living room empty. Then I heard it. A muffled voice, followed by movement, coming from the bedroom. Instinctively I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Something was wrong. It was a boy and a girl, about 6 years old, and with my heart pounding and a sick feeling swirling in my stomach, I crept closer to the bedroom door, peeking through the crack. My world shattered in an instant. There, on the bed, was Charlotte. She was fully undressed, and next to her was some man. His face was turned away, but his presence was unmistakable. My wife responded, exclaiming, "It's like Charlotte!" She asked if I knew where the series was taking place. My breath hitched, and for a split second, fury surged through me. Every fibre of my being screamed to burst in there, to tear into the room and demand an explanation, to confront them both and let my anger loose. But somehow, I stopped myself. "Captain Doctor says the sky is bright again and the clouds are dispersing," she reads. I said. I had no intention of engaging with them. The rage boiled under my skin, but I forced it down, swallowing back the betrayal burning in my throat. My hands shook as I stepped back, retreating into her suite. My thoughts raced, and then a cold, calculating calm took over. I grabbed my digital camera from my suitcase, the one I'd planned to use to capture memories of this trip, and adjusted it for low light, switching off the flash. I knew what I had to do. I returned to the bedroom door, silently positioning myself in the shadows. They were so wrapped up in each other that they didn't even notice me standing there. With each quiet click of the shutter, I captured their betrayal, proof of everything I had just witnessed. A request from me wouldn't have caused problems, for the friends of the deceased knew that I was the one capable of delivering. When I had enough, I slipped away, back into her suite. My emotions felt raw and exposed, but I had to keep it together. I couldn't let them see me unravel. As I scanned the room, my eyes landed on her open briefcase. I rifled through it, finding a business card with the name Roger Pearson, the lead negotiator from our company. I pocketed it. Back at her desk, I connected my camera to her laptop, transferring the damning photos onto her computer. I didn't stop there. I set one of the images as her desktop background, knowing she'd see it the next time she opened her laptop. The weight of what I had done started to hit me, but I couldn't stop now. I packed up my things and slipped out of the room, the betrayal pressing down on my chest like a boulder. I handed the keycard back to the front desk, my hand shaking slightly, and left the building. My next move was automatic. I called the airline, desperate to get out of there. Luckily, there was an early morning flight back to Chicago that would have me home by mid-morning. The timing was perfect. I knew by then Charlotte would be starting her day, likely turning on her laptop for the negotiation. That would be the moment she realized I knew everything. I checked into a nearby motel to kill the hours until my flight, but I couldn't sleep. The images from that hotel room played on a relentless loop in my head, each one more sickening than the last. I let myself cry, the anger, sadness, and betrayal all spilling out. One type prediction says, the committee will meet tomorrow to complete their review. Their priority will be getting real clarity on who the ransom comes by. By the time morning rolled around, I was emotionally drained but determined. This marriage was over. Back in Chicago, as soon as I got into my car, my phone started ringing. It was Charlotte. I stared at her name on the screen, my hand hovering over the decline button, before I finally turned off the phone altogether. I couldn't talk to her. Not now, not ever. When I got home, the house phone started ringing, her name flashing on the caller ID. Again, I didn't answer. This time, her voicemail came through. Mike, you need to call me back. It's important. Her voice sounded frantic, but I felt nothing. She had lost the right to urgency. I changed into some old clothes and left to pick up a U-Haul truck. There was no time to waste. By the afternoon, Charlotte would be back, and I needed to be long gone before then. And over the next few hours, I packed everything. Every reminder of the life we once had. It all went into storage. I had already made an appointment with a lawyer, so the next stop was his office to initiate the divorce. Though I briefly considered using her affair as the basis for the divorce, I decided on irreconcilable differences. I kept the evidence of her infidelity in my back pocket, just in case things got ugly. After the lawyer's office, I went straight to the bank. I transferred half of everything in our shared accounts into new ones under my name. I did the same with our investments, consulting with my advisor. It all felt so final, so cold, but it had to be done. By the time I arrived at my parents' house, suitcase in hand, I was a shell of the man I'd been just 24 hours before. I walked through the front door, the weight of it all crashing down on me. When I walked into my parents' house, I could see the worry on my mum's face right away. Mike, what's going on? Charlotte's been calling here non-stop looking for you. Did you tell her you'd be here? She asked, her voice laced with concern. I sat down heavily, the weight of the last 24 hours pressing down hard. My dad, who had retired a few years back, watched quietly from across the room. Taking a deep breath, I told them everything. I told my parents everything. About Charlotte's betrayal, the photos, and the fact that my marriage was over. Disbelief clouded their faces as I explained the whole mess. Music and theatre illuminated the cavern tunnel, while the wind rose and fell with the sea, shouting, "Cheating!" My mum said, shaking her head like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. Charlotte cheating," my mum said, shaking her head like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. My dad didn't say anything. He just stared at the table, his expression hard to read. "Yeah, it's over," I said, the words scraping my throat as I forced them out. "I've started the process for a divorce." Saying it out loud felt like it might bring some relief, but it didn't. Everything still felt raw, like a wound that wouldn't close. "Can I stay here for a while?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, "at least until I can sort out a place of my own." I didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mike. Stay as long as you need," my mum said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. Flooded with panic, Charlotte sat frozen as Roger, sitting next to her, leaned in to look at her screen. "What the hell is that?" he whispered, his voice sharp. I don't know, Roger," she stammered, her voice barely steady. "I swear that wasn't there the last time I used my laptop." She shrugged. "But that's you," he said, pointing at the screen. "And that could be me." Her mind raced, trying to make sense of how everything had unraveled so quickly. "But how could anyone have taken that picture?" she muttered, more to herself than him. "I've had my laptop with me the entire trip, either in my room or in yours." "Sister was not persuaded," he replied, trying to make sense of the situation. "If anyone had designed to do it, it certainly wasn't you." Roger's face darkened. "You better check if anyone had access to your room last night," he said, panic creeping into his voice. "And try to contact Mike. Find out where he was." Charlotte nodded, but her heart sank deeper. Could it have been Mike? No, it couldn't be. Or could it? The thought sent a chill through her. If Mike had put that photo on her laptop, it meant one thing. He knew. And if he knew, their marriage might be over. But she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Her hands trembled as she gathered her things and rushed out of the meeting. She hailed a cab back to the hotel, her mind spiraling the entire way. Once there, she went straight to the reception desk. She told him the circumstances of her husband's fiancée and the disappearance of their child. It sounded like an... "Can you check if anyone entered my room last night?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. The receptionist typed quickly on their computer before looking up. "A Mr. Mike Brooks was given a key at 9:45 p.m. and returned it about 30 minutes later." The words hit her like a brick. Mike had been there. He must have seen everything. Her stomach churned, and for the first time, the reality of the situation hit her. Her marriage might actually be over. The thought of losing Mike, the man she still loved, made her chest tighten. She dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried his office, but his secretary said he was on a business trip in California and wouldn't be back until tomorrow. California. So he had been on a business trip, but he must have stopped here on his way back. It's clearly not the California return. Desperate for answers, she called his parents. They said they hadn't seen him in a few days, but promised to let him know she was looking for him. The silence from Mike's end was deafening, but she wasn't ready to give up. She packed her things and booked the next flight back to Chicago. Before leaving, she called Roger. When he answered, there was a long pause before he spoke. "Charlotte, we might be facing divorces, or maybe worse." I laughed. "Probably not." "Worse. What could be worse than a divorce?" she asked, caught off guard. "Our company has strict policies about managers dating," Roger said, his tone serious. "If word gets out, we could both lose our jobs." Charlotte hadn't even considered that. Losing Mike already felt like her world was falling apart. The idea of losing her job on top of it, she wasn't sure she could handle that. But she pushed the thought aside. "I need to get back to Chicago and talk to Mike," she said, more to convince herself than Roger. "Maybe there's still a way to fix this." "Keep me updated," Roger replied before hanging up. But when she walked into their house and saw his clothes were gone, her heart sank. He was done. She tried calling him again and again, but he still didn't answer. Desperate, she drove to his parents' house. When she saw him there, it was like looking at a stranger. He was cold, distant, completely closed off. Her words didn't reach him. He told her flat out that he was filing for divorce and that nothing she said would change his mind. When he suggested writing him a letter to explain herself, it felt like a cruel twist of the knife. She left, crying all the way to her car. Everything they'd planned, growing old together, starting a family, seeing grandchildren, it all seemed to evaporate in that moment. She cried until she couldn't anymore. Then, selfishly, she started worrying about whether she'd be too old to have kids by the time she found someone new. Eventually, she pulled herself together, started the car, and drove back to their empty house, feeling completely lost. Meanwhile, Mike woke up after a restless night, still haunted by the images of Charlotte and Roger. He went downstairs to make coffee, hoping to distract himself. Grabbing his camera and laptop, he decided to take another look at the photos, searching for something, anything that could help him make sense of it all. As he scrolled through the images, his eyes narrowed on Roger's right arm. Something was there. He zoomed in, and there it was. A heart tattoo with the name Lynn 8 written inside it. Lynn was Roger's wife's name. That was the proof Mike had been looking for. A new wave of determination washed over him. He showered, got dressed, and headed downstairs, where his mum was busy making breakfast. He kissed her on the cheek and headed out the door, ready to take action. At work, he immediately burned a few CDs with the photos, including a close-up of Roger's tattoo. He printed several copies and placed them in a folder with all the evidence. With everything prepared, Mike marched straight to HR to meet with Chad, the HR manager. Chad greeted him with a friendly smile. They had played golf together a few times, so the mood was casual at first. Mike laid the photos in front of Chad, watching his reaction. "What's this, Mike?" Chad asked, curious but slightly amused. Mike's face was dead serious. "Sorry, Chad, but this isn't a joke. That's my wife, Charlotte, and that's Roger Pearson. These were taken Tuesday night in Roger's hotel room in Seattle. They were there for company negotiations." Chad's face paled as he pieced it together. "Oh man, Mike, I'm really sorry to hear that. What do you want to do about this?" Mike looked him square in the eye. "Well, they're job contracts. The HR policy was clear, no romantic relationships between managers." Chad leaned back in his chair, frowning as he looked over the evidence Mike had provided. "You could fire them both for breaking that rule," Mike said firmly. Chad hesitated. "We've never actually enforced that rule before. Are you sure you want to go down this path? Making the affair public, it could get messy. And are you absolutely sure about divorcing Charlotte?" Mike paused, considering Chad's words, but his mind was made up. "I'm sure," he said. "I've already instructed my lawyer to draft the divorce papers. If the company doesn't take action, I'll be ready to sue." Chad sighed, then nodded. "Don't worry, Mike. I'll talk to our legal team and make sure this gets handled." With that, Mike left Chad's office and headed to see his boss, Mr. Patterson. He needed to inform him of what was happening, both personally and professionally, and so spent the following weeks in Chad's office, where they grew personal friendship. When Mike explained the situation about Charlotte and Roger, Mr. Patterson was visibly shocked and concerned. "Take the rest of the week off," he said without hesitation. "Consider it vacation." Mike nodded, grateful for the gesture. Before he left, Mr. Patterson mentioned something unexpected. "You've been doing excellent work. The client in California was thrilled with how quickly you fixed their production line. On top of that, the engineer out there is retiring soon due to health reasons. I think you'd be a great fit for the position. If you're interested, why not? One more question. Why do you think credentials will have such a positive effect on civilization?" Mike felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. "I'll think about it and let you know next week," he replied. As he left Mr. Patterson's office, Mary, his boss's secretary, stopped him. "Mike, your wife stopped by earlier looking for you. She said she'd come back later," Mary said casually. Mike sighed. "Mary, if she comes back, please tell her I don't want to see her." Mary's eyes widened. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize there was an issue." There's a big issue, Mike replied, keeping his tone steady. Charlotte and Roger Pearson were cheating. He figured the news would spread around the office by lunchtime. Mary wasn't exactly known for keeping secrets, but that was fine. He had bigger things to deal with. Back at his desk, he picked up the phone and made an important call to Roger's wife, Linda. Linda, it's Mike Brooks. How are you? He began, trying to sound calm. I'm doing all right, Mike. Roger mentioned you might call, but he didn't say why, Linda replied. Do you have a moment? We need to talk. I'm free now. You know where we live, right? I'll be there in 15 minutes, Mike said, hanging up. When he arrived at Linda's house, he felt a mix of nerves and resolve. He couldn't let Roger off easy, but he also wanted to make sure Linda wasn't blindsided. Linda, he thought. Hi, Mike, come in. Want some coffee? Linda offered, welcoming him into the living room. That would be great, thanks, he replied. A few moments later, she returned with 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him. So, what's going on? She asked, her face calm but expectant. Mike took a deep breath. I'll get straight to it, Linda. I caught Roger and Charlotte together in Seattle. I'm divorcing her, and I've started the process to get them both fired from the company. I wanted to give you a heads up, because it's going to become public soon. Laura's eyes lit up, and her voice cracked a little. Which means I won't need to be private anymore, she said. Linda sipped her coffee, her expression unreadable. Mike, I've had my suspicions about Roger for a while, especially on his business trips, she admitted. But I didn't want to believe it. I'm really sorry, Linda. I have photos if you need proof. Linda nodded slowly. Yeah, leave me a copy. I'll look at them later, when I'm ready. I knew this day would come, but it's still tough. Mike could see the sadness in her eyes, but she was handling it with grace. I feel the same way, he said. Charlotte and I were close to starting a family, but I can't see a future with someone I can't trust. The mother of my kids needs to be someone I can respect. I understand, Mike. Thanks for being honest with me. I'd rather hear it from you than through rumors. I'm sure Roger's going to feel the weight of it soon enough. And who knows, maybe Charlotte will too. Linda replied, her voice a mixture of sadness and resolve. I wish it had just been a one-time thing. It would have been easier to forgive. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know, Mike said as he stood to leave. Thanks, Mike. I'll be okay, Linda said, offering a small but genuine smile. 6 months have passed since I filed for divorce. This morning I received the final papers. It's official. I'm no longer married to Charlotte. Life is a crucial journey, and I will travel it to the very end. Finally, the end is near. It feels like a weight has been lifted. I haven't seen or spoken to her since that day at my parents' house. My lawyer handled everything, and I let go of the house, the furniture, and all the things we bought on credit. Cutting ties was the best thing for me. And this way, the crack becomes clear for everybody. Without my income, Charlotte had to sell the house. Though she struggled financially at first, she managed to bounce back. She's a smart lawyer and found a new job within a month. From what I've heard, she's even started dating again. Good for her. I hope she's honest with her new boyfriend about why our marriage ended. Linda divorced Roger too. He lost his job and found another one, but with a lower salary. He's struggling to keep up with alimony and child support. As for me, I've moved on and found peace. CLS. Advertising title: New, Capricorn's move into new landscape. Capricorn's new behavior. I relocated to Ventura, California, a serene coastal town halfway between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles. It's quiet and beautiful. I've settled into an apartment building with lots of singles and young couples. The cost of living is high, but I'm managing just fine. I've even started seeing someone new, a woman who lives in my building. Like me, she's been through a divorce, and we've found a lot of comfort in each other's company. We're taking things slow, but there's a calmness in this relationship that feels right. Trust is important, and after what we've both been through, we understand that better than anyone. We're not rushing into anything, but the future looks bright. Maybe kids are still in the cards. Life is unpredictable, but I'm ready for whatever comes next. For now, I'm enjoying this new chapter. Work is going well, I'm in a peaceful place, and I'm taking life as it comes. Sometimes, things don't work out as planned, but that's okay. I've learned there's always something better waiting on the other side. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to my story. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Take care.